All right. Yeah. Okay. Wow. How are you? Yeah. 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 That's great. Hey, Robert, how you doing? Awesome. Cool. Well, then we should hit the music. Oh yeah, really shine with the magic fingers. What's up, online people? What's up, Jamie Duggan? Long time. Stefan? Yes. Wow. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. We'll let people trickle in. y'all, as you make your way in. Just want to let folks know, 12:15, there's going to be some pizza in the back, a little bit of food. Wouldn't be proper to have these events and not feed people. So yeah, we'll have some food in the back, 12:15. Folks can make their way there, and we'll just find a way to carry on organically. Maybe we can start fading the music out. Okay, so we should begin. Hi, everybody. Hey. Hey. All right. Thank you all for being here. I really, truly appreciate it. People in three-dimensional space and people in the screen space, really appreciate, y'all's presence. So I want to start in some kind of ceremonial space. So I'm going to invite y'all to join me if you like. You're welcome to hold your own as well. So I like to start first by paying respect to the ancestors. Paying respect to the ancestors of this place, the Arapaho campus, Arapaho Street, the lands, the Arapaho peoples. Some say the Cheyenne peoples. Some say the Apache, some say the Ute. I'd like us to take a moment just in our minds, see if we can really bring in our hearts gratitude for the peoples that held and stewarded this land before the tumultuous arrival of many of our own ancestors. I'd like to pay respects to the ancestors of everyone present in this room, no matter what part of the planet we come from. And maybe just taking a moment and seeing those people that brought you here, whose lives made your life possible. And I like to pay respect to the ancestors of the stones, the soil, the worms, plants, all the critters, all those beings that preceded us in time, so they say. Our bodies are made of their bodies. I'd like to pay respect to the children, the born children and the unborn children, the future generations, the future beings. Whether we ourselves give birth or not, all of us are preparing space for those future beings and those growing beings. So to pay respect to them. And if you have children or young people in your life, see them in your heart and your mind now. I like to pay respect to space, air in between us, the breath, the invisible we all partake in. In many of our languages, the words air and spirit are synonymous. So just by drawing in breath, maybe just draw that breath with appreciation and gratitude. Even those people online, we're all drawing one big breath together, pulling from the same air. And then down into the heart of each of us, that drum in the center of your chest. Just take a moment and notice that drum, feel that drum. Okay. All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone, as you're coming in. And okay, so today, or this afternoon, I would like to share some story with you all, and I'd like to do it in the spirit of what Susan Berggraf refers to as an academic love story, right? You know, scholars, and all of us here are scholars on some level or other. A lot of what we're curious about is driven by things that we feel deeply in and that we have a long-standing interest and care for. So listen in terms of an academic love story. And I'm also posing what I'm sharing here as scholarship or as counter scholarship even, okay? This is the counterculture, right? Isn't that what we said? All right, so I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna move around a lot. I'm one of those kind of humans. I gotta move around a lot. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the PowerPoint piece. And we'll do some of it's gonna be storytelling, and some of it I'm gonna ask y'all to jump in and help shape the space with me. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Afrofuturism, astrology, and an invitation. And we're gonna do this somehow in 1 hour. Oh. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's a picture I drew some years ago. And, you know, I grew up in Colorado here. I grew up on the plains in Aurora, kind of close to DIA. And especially at that time, the skies were very prominent. The sky is very prominent out in the western part of the country. It's huge. And I really had a fascination with the sky as a child. And I just loved it. In the summertime, you got the regular thunderstorms, you know, and then after that, you got a rainbow. And I mean, it was like clockwork for a certain period. You had tornadoes, you had the snow. It was just always something. And then once the weather moved through, then it was just the bright blue sky again, or at night, the dark black kind of crystalline above happening. So as a child, I was just infinitely fascinated with the sky. And I think that like my first kind of religious impulse was just that wonder of the sky and that part of nature which we call celestial. And I wanted to be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I had like three things. I wanted to be a weather forecaster. I used to love the weather person going like this. I was just like, yeah, it was just, had a little thermometer. I wanted to be an astronaut, like math children, until I ran into like, oh yeah, math. And I wanted to be an astronomer, which is, more looking at like the physics and compositions and mathematics of the moving planets. So it was all that kind of orientation. And this is another picture, another drawing. When I was about 10 years old, I had an experience where I was waiting for my family in the house, and we were going to go out to dinner for my birthday. And I was walking on the sidewalk, and there was ice. I'm a December birthday, and there was ice on the ground, and I had these little cowboy boots on, and I was chipping the ice with my heel, and it was dark, it's wintertime, and I had a moment where I just looked up, and I saw the Orion constellation, and it was just like, and I just had this feeling of it was a wordless, imageless, like, and I don't know how to describe it exactly, but the sense that I got at that point was like, you're on now, and you are being watched. And I think this feeling of being watched by the stars, it's a primordial human feeling. You find it in cultures all over the world. You find it in poetry all over the world, the sense that we're kind of on some kind of stage, and that there are these sort of personalities that are observing us. So this is a map. This is from the Rudolf Steiner people, the people who are kind of behind Waldorf School. And this is a map that I was exposed to at a certain point in my life, and I'll speak a bit about that later. But if you can see, the numbers are hard to see, but the map is kind of broken up into chunks. And it's 1 through 7 at the very top there, and you can kind of see a moon crescent, and then 8 through 14, right? So it's broken up into 7-year chunks. And around my 21st birthday, I had a series of experiences, and a lot of them were basically just me just sitting there and then something popping in my head. It wasn't so much external. But I had a series of experiences that basically changed my life and kind of, I feel like, set me on a trajectory as an adult. And I was still a kid for sure. But yeah, and I think part of even the reason that I'm here at Naropa is because I'm kind of trying to hold space for people, mostly undergraduate students, and obviously we have non-traditional students and people of different ages, but a lot of our students are at that age or just after that age, that 21, or late teens, early 20s period, where I think that there's a natural, and according to maps like this, there's a sort of natural opportunity from the universe to go through some type of transformational shift. So a lot of things happened to me really quickly. I got married. I used to hang out with this one really cool woman, and one day we were like, wait, don't let each other pass by. And So that's Michelle. It's my wife there. And then um, I really had this feeling. They talk about in the image previously that at the age of 21, the soul of the person, which is over you your whole life and around you, it actually comes into being in phases. And at 21, the soul, and it really makes a strong approach towards the person. And so I just felt it. I saw things in my life change. I had situations that would test me over and over until I made the right decision. And if I didn't, I would get sent backwards. And it's all very little things. It's all very little things. You steal something, and then you walk out, and someone's like, "Hey!" You're like, "All right, I can't do that anymore." Okay. And I was a moody, broody young person, and I couldn't hardly talk to people. And so part of what I started to do around the end of high school is I started to watch the sunset, right? Again, this thing with the sky. I made sure every night I was out to see the sunset. I couldn't make it for sunrise, but I watched sunset. And then I started to watch the moon. And I could never really figure out what the heck was going on with the moon. I would go out at night and it would just be gone. And I was like, what the heck? And then I started to have these feelings almost that I would experience deja vu. I would experience synchronicities. And I started to have these feelings almost like, first of all, I felt my life was on loop. And that I started to be like, wait, like, is that the moon? Am I having deja vu because I'm in the same mood that I was at this same time of the month? It's like, huh. And I also just stared at it. I would just stare at it. And I got involved in a lot of practices at this point. Bill Plotkin, he's an ego psychologist, he talks about soul crafts. Got involved in a lot of them. And one of them was automatic writing. I used to just write, and I would just no filter. And one day this line jumped out at me, and it said, amorphous signal of the blue planets. And I was like, huh, what is that? Okay. So years passed, this is years later, and I had the good fortune of coming into relationship with a local teacher, Melissa Michaels. Does a lot of work around dance, embodiment, and movement as a spiritual path and as a healing path. And she really kind of laid this grid for us of like rites of passage, and that historically many peoples all the world over practiced these. People knew that these psychological mutations happened at a certain point in your life, and also that you could miss them, and that if people missed them and didn't find some kind of root in something greater than themselves, then you have a bunch of adults that you have a bunch of grown bodies that walk around the place and can't see beyond themselves and are often dangerous and destructive. And when you have a small scale society and there's, dozens of miles between you and the next group of people, one person in your group that jacks it up could kill everybody. You may not make it through the winter. So a lot of our ancestors put the kids through some type of fire experience to make sure that when they came out on the other side, they were baked enough to deal with the responsibilities of being an adult. And I mean, I think we have a sort of vague notion that that's actually part of what college is, and we kind of work with that in a vague way here in Europa. So let me check the time. Linear time. Okay. So this Melissa Michaels' work, this is a camp called Surfing the Creative, rites of passage, folks from all over the world, got to meet people from all over and go through a lot with them. And then we were kind of like, we had a feeling oftentimes that we were dancing the world soul. And I really got this model of what what rites of passage might look like, and how do we do it in contemporary times, and knowing that we're not going to do it perfectly, knowing that many of us have been severed from our ancestral traditions by erasure and destruction and intentional forgetting. And so how do we recreate and reconstitute using the kind of fragments that we remember and fresh inspiration of what just lives in our spirits? And we did it in this place called the Star House, which is up in the hills here. And you can't really see it in this picture, but each of those, there's 12 pillars that hold up the place, and each pillar has a plate on it, and each plate has one of the signs of the zodiac in it. So we spent summer after summer dancing in there and just passing by these plates, passing them by. And over time, what I found is it just imprinted this concept or the circle of the zodiac into me. It just. So I got into, in graduate school, I got into the study of astrology in a serious way. I was curious about ancient philosophies, non-Western philosophies, kind of as alternatives to what what we have these days, and what we have, especially in the sense of like a kind of colonized thing, where we have these certain ideas about what constitutes time, what constitutes reality. If I say the word soul in an academic context, I mean, I can say it here in Europa, but there's places where if I say that, people are going to be like, "Ah, yeah, he's a woo-woo, he's off," right? Okay, so I was studying those, and I started to get interested in the astrology. I had a newspaper idea of it, and I had some kind of vague notions of it, and I had the feeling of it. That's the thing. In my early 20s, I got the feeling of it. I could feel that I was actually part of the universe, and I could feel that there's been a qualitative shift. I don't exactly know what happened, but it's like everybody was walking this way and then everybody went like that. Okay. So I want to try to play with / demonstrate / have us act out the logic of astrology. Okay. So I'm going to ask for some volunteers. Okay, I need one person to play the moon. Since you put your hand up first. Okay, we got our moon in the house. Okay, and then I need 4 people. I need someone to stand roughly here in the east. You can just walk right on up. Yeah, you stay in the middle for now. Okay? I need someone to stand roughly in reorient. Roughly in the south. Yep. Roughly in the west. There, in the north. Okay. So there's a way in which you can understand, okay, astrology as a, some people think it's a science, some people think it's an art, some people think it's bullshit. And I think we can hold all of those perspectives. And there's many types of astrology. There are many cultural traditions of astrology. There's not just the newspaper astrology we have, or birthday, sun sign astrologies. There's a lot. But the one that I'm most familiar with is zodiacal astrology, which is of the tropical tradition, which I don't even want to get into that right now. But that's the astrology that most people in this part of the world are familiar with, or that's the calculation that most people in this part of the world are familiar with. So that's the one to share. That picture, I'm feeling that. So we're going to try to model how this zodiacal astrology works. Okay. The whole of it is based off of the concept of a cycle, and maybe not the concept, maybe the experience of the cycle. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask you to just stand just a little bit more. Okay, so we can get our right angles, we can get a cross going. Okay, we got a cross going. And for those of you online, if you can't see this, if you want to, you could stand up in your own room and you can find the east wall, the south wall, the west wall, and the north wall, okay? And you can do some of this yourself. Okay, so Chloe. Okay, so Chloe's gonna play the moon for us. And Chloe, I'm gonna ask that, I'm wondering if there's something actually, whatever, we're in class together, so I'm like, I know there's something. But I'm wondering if there's something that you are working on right now. It could be an external thing, like, I don't know, it could be something you're creating, or it could be an internal thing. It could be a question and answer. And I wonder if you could just take a moment. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a small thing, okay? Take a moment and see if you can locate something that you might want to work with a little bit. Okay. Are you willing to share anything about it?
Yeah, definitely. I'm playing with this idea of like chaos is comfortable to me. And so I create chaos because of my childhood. Like it became familiar. And so it's like, I kind of just, oh, if everything is good, what's coming next? There's something bad coming. And so I'm playing with this like, okay, if it's comfortable to me, how can I like how can I also see the other side? If chaos is a thing, then also the other side is, like kind of just allowing things to be good and not trying to question it so much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So creating chaos because you feel like maybe, like if things settle, like something might jump out at you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So just hanging out with that realization, it sounds like, and working with that realization. Okay. Okay. So we're going to look at the model of the moon cycle, and I'm simplifying things greatly. Okay. But how the way the moon cycle works roughly, we'll start out here in the east, and we're going to call this the new moon. Okay. And in the new moon, according to the, yes.
We're excited about the new
Okay, all right, all right. All right, so in the new moon, according to the logic of astrology, the new moon is dark. This is that moment when I would go outside and I was like, what is going on? Why is there no moon? The new moon is this dark period, or that sliver of a crescent that you often see right above the horizon, and then it's out. And the idea of the new moon is kind of like soil. It's like things being under the earth. That darkness is like an under earth kind of, and it's where things are taking their form. Some impulse is starting to come alive and pull from the nutrients around it to form itself. So the new moon, the idea is that it's a good time to conceive something. Okay? Now, move around here to the first quarter moon, and this is when the moon's about half. Okay, it's waxing, it's filling, metaphorically. Moon's about half. Okay, and that's actually, I think, where we are now, roughly. Okay, and here the idea is it's almost like the seed has now pushed up through the earth. Okay, and so at the new moon, you have to, or the half moon, first quarter moon, you have to make effort. You have to push on something. You have to initiate something, and you'll encounter potentially a lot of inertia and resistance from the past, and you'll want to backslide back into the darkness of comfort and what we call cocoon here at Naropa. Okay, so you make effort here. Ow. Okay, now the full moon, Lucy, at the full moon. Okay, Lucy, I know you good. What do you know about full moon, Lucy? What does your meditation show you about?
Well, it's weird that you asked this because I made a moon during my shift at the library. So it's funny that we're talking about this. Um, it's about accomplishment, abundance, reaching the fullness of potential, rising into your being, embodying fullness and intention, but also balancing on the precipice of release. So catharsis, and the catharsis and release that comes from being. It's kind of like the like aha moment.
Yeah, the aha moment, whatever here you seated here and that you worked for here, sing, comes to fruition here. Okay, and the new moon is in it. It's like 180 degrees opposite. You can see what you've done. And there's an aspect to it too, where it's like, if you don't want to see what you've done, then the full moon can be a kind of terrible situation. You can resisting that. Okay, so here things are manifested bright for all to see. Okay, And then here at the last quarter phase of the moon, and the moon is half again, but it's this way, this time it's waning. At this phase, you start to look back at what you've done. You start to reflect on what you've done. You start to analyze what you've done. Okay? And you start to evaluate, okay, what was the worth of that situation? What did I learn? Okay? And it's a learning process. The whole thing is. It's a growth process organically and psychically. It's a learning process. Okay? So, and then here you start to approach, okay, I did it. I messed up. I did that was dope. And I got to kind of let that go. And now what else? And then you start again. So the phase begins and ends in darkness. The whole cycle begins and ends in blackness. Okay? And now I'm being intentional with my words here, really. Okay, so Chloe, you got a sense of that? Okay, so Chloe, let's come here to the new moon phase, and I'm gonna hand you the mic, okay? And you can choose your own adventure. You don't have to speak, but take this impulse you're working with. And maybe speak a word or two. What does it look like at this phase? 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 Okay? So.
Okay. Can I have help with this?
Yeah, sure.
You got this.
And moon phases, you all have ideas of what it might look like. What's up, Chloe?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I guess just like even having the idea that chaos is comfortable could be like, okay, I know that that is present. And maybe that's like the start of it, of my process.
It'll be ever present forever. So.
It's like, okay, that's a thing. Is that, yeah? Is that,
It's okay.
yeah,
See that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, oh geez, hello, waxing, you're waxing. So it's hard for me to like conceptualize this. What do you think, waxing moon?
Cut our hair, we're growing, we just started rethinking, and this is the portion where we have to have a lot of courage to go through with our endeavors, and not just like go through.
Oh, right, you said the like, don't go back.
Don't
You're
go
like,
back, don't go back, don't go back. I'm gonna push you forward.
Okay, you're pushing me forward with this idea, and I'm like, I really want to process this. I want to figure this out, or, engage with this. You're like, engagement. Okay. And then I'm coming over to the full moon, and I'm like, ah! I'm crying, and I'm releasing, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is associated with my childhood, and it's so intense, and yeah, anything more to say, full moon?
Well, emptiness is the same as being. So be in your emptiness and you'll move right on.
Thank you, full moon. Okay, and then I'm coming over to waning here, and I'm like, I'm contemplating, I'm reflecting on all this big release transformation that I just came through, and yeah, what?
At this point, do you like the cycle you've completed, or will you do it differently the next time?
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm like contemplating this and just like, okay, I've gone through this cycle, and now I'm coming back around to the beginning again, and maybe I still have the same thought, but it's different. I've come through a process. It's like a layer, and maybe now I'm going to go through a different layer with it. Yeah.
Is it chaos if it's a cycle?
Yeah. This is cool. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Lunar Phases. Okay. All right. So just hold that, if you can, hold that cross in your consciousness and hold that cycle through it. Okay. So here you gotta bring some effort to it. And you're probably gonna meet with some resistance, your own and externally. Okay. You got a project, you bring it to Sun, then you gotta deal with administration. Okay. Here, your project's happening. No, it's all love for administrators on board. Somebody's got to do Saturn. Okay. Then you got it's blooming, it's happening, and then at this phase, it's also like what you get the benefits of it. You reap at this phase. You reap, and you collect seeds, so to speak, to be planted at the next cycle. Okay? So we're going to hold that in our mind. And also, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, what is this one? My math's off. 270. Okay, great. Okay, so that's one kind of cycle in astrology, which is just one factor, like the moon. Okay? And the moon makes its orbit 28 days. That's why we have the word month. It means moonth. Okay? And it's a real unit of time. It's not, time isn't a made up thing completely. But it's not just something that people made up. It's something that people noticed. Okay? Now, so that's the moon. Moon goes through, and the moon goes through the entire zodiac every month. Fast. Okay? So all of our, if you're a sun sign this or whatever, every month the moon is going. Okay? Now there's another kind. I need 2 other volunteers. Actually, maybe more. Okay, we may not go crazy deep this time. Okay, all right, we got 1. We got 2. Beautiful. All right. And actually, I need 1 other volunteer. All right, you're like, I already do enough. Okay, somebody want to be a bell ringer? You don't have to, you're not going to have to, do an inner x-ray. You just do, okay? Okay, so we got in our imagination here, this east point is the starting point of the cycle, okay? We still have all those phases. Okay, now I'm gonna ask Swanee, you're gonna be Neptune, okay? So maybe come out here, okay? And tell me your name again. Swecha? Okay. You are going to be Jupiter. Okay? Now, something I'll skip, I'll come back to that. Okay, so Neptune, the moon moves around the whole zodiac or around the solar system in 30 days. Neptune moves around in like 146 years. Okay? So Swanee, if you would, start walking this circle like it's gonna take you 146 years. Okay? Now Jupiter, which is closer to us by a good bit, but still pretty far out there in space, Jupiter moves around, and let's maybe switch it if you want to come about right here. Okay, Jupiter moves around the whole zodiac in 12 years. Okay, so maybe we're gonna tweak our time a little bit, but maybe just moving a little bit faster. Okay, a 12-year pace compared to our pardon me. Okay. Now, Xanon, every time you see the 2 of them cross each other's path, you ring the bell. put a little bit more in there so the folks online can hear. Pause. Thank you. Okay. All right. Hang out right there. Now we're gonna drop into a little bit of character. Okay. Swanee, Neptune. What do you know about Neptune?
I know that Neptune, I think, is the ruler of Aquarius. Pisces. Okay. Well, those deep waters. Neptune is also Poseidon, so god of the sea, carries a trident, like some other characters in mythologies and religions. I know that he, I think, is the older brother to Zeus, but got eaten first, and well, Zeus released them all. But but he was made in charge of the seas. I think he holds it down pretty well. Sailors and such would pray to him, safe passage and journeys through the stormy seas, which might occur if you piss the guy off. So, you got to be good to Neptune, got to be good to the sea. Yeah. I was always told never to turn your back on the sea.
Yeah, don't mess with the sea. I don't mess with the sea. I go to the beach and I'm like tiptoeing in an alien world. Okay, so Swanee, if you're gonna take on Neptune and walk like Neptune, based on what you described, how about maybe just as a free posture? How would you? Okay.
Like how one swims and strokes, but carrying that into the stride.
Okay, great. Now, let's go on, if you don't mind, I'm not trying to control humans, we'll stay right here, okay? Okay, Svecha. Now, Jupiter, what do you know about Jupiter?
Not a lot.
Okay. Even mythologically, just.
Something about expansiveness.
Yes. Yeah, Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system. Do you know that Jupiter, when you hear the static on the radio, a lot of that's Jupiter. Yeah, this Jupiter's pumping out these, I don't know if it's infrared radio waves or something, but that's Jupiter. And actually when it changes its position, there's changes that happen in those statics. Okay, so Jupiter's expansiveness. Now Jupiter is in Roman mythology is Roman and Greek is Zeus. So Jupiter is the little brother of Neptune. But Jupiter is like, I'm the one in charge, actually. Okay? So Jupiter is partly what Jupiter represents is expansion. And it's expansion because you feel good, because you're full. And so you undertake things and they go well for you. Jupiter's optimism and it's faith in our actions. Okay? And it can be a little pompous because of that. So if you were going to step into Jupiter, how would that look? Okay, yeah. Now Jupiter, ready to go? Jupiter and Neptune, 180 degrees from each other. Check each other out. Okay, now this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep that walk going. Same pace. Neptune at Neptune's pace, Jupiter's pace. But when you all cross each other, you take on a little Jupiter and you take on a little Neptune. Okay? All right, so ready. Shh. Go. Let's see that one more time, if you would. Yeah, all right. Give it up for our planets. Okay. So, folks, what did you notice? What did you see in that? Anything spatially? What came up for you? Swagger. Yeah.
I was gonna say disassociation, because it kind of got me like contemplating like everything at once a little bit, and it was really trippy. And then just to see the cyclical process, I was like, that is always happening all the time, and it just like tripped me out a bit.
Right. They said he couldn't actually process it, and he was staring at the ground most of the time. It was a lot, maybe, to really think about, okay? Yeah, Lucy, then Regina.
Yeah, I just kind of noticed when they took on each other's personalities, I was thinking of what those two look like in our minds, like what they look like whenever two parts of ourselves collide and when we have to like balance those two, but how like instantaneous that is, and we don't like notice it always.
Right. So there are these, according to astrology anyway, there are these inner chemistries that are happening with us a lot, all the time. These subtle shifts of direction, and oftentimes we don't notice it. So part of it is about slowing down. Part of the whole concept of natural time is about slowing down enough and maybe having in part some type of external point of reference to help us reflect internally of, oh, like, hey, maybe something did just happen here. Yeah.
Yeah, when they passed each other in such the movement, I felt like a somatic reaction, like my stomach dropped or some sort of like zzz when they passed each other.
Do you feel like maybe like it was like, did you expect it or it just happened when it?
It felt more like spontaneous.
Yeah. Huh. So there's a spike. Uh-huh. Yes.
It made me think of the term celestial bodies. And like until now, I never imagined like celestial bodies anything else but planets. And now I feel like I can see them with their own personalities and with their own like kind of spheres around them. And to think about that is literally just like totally changing my ideas about the universe right now. Because I'm imagining them as personalities.
Yeah. Okay, so the kind of standard scientific view now is that we're actually just made of chemicals, and that our personalities are chemical. But then that's kind of interesting if you flip it. It's like, wait, our personalities are chemicals. So do chemicals have personalities? Or are they the basic components of personality? So the idea of the planets in moving around the zodiac is almost like there are chemical components of personality that move around in the juices of every person. Okay? Now, here's another thing that happened. As Swanee and Shveta passed each other, every time they pass each other, it's equivalent to the new moon phase. It's equivalent to the beginning and end of a cycle. Okay? And unlike just going around the moon from beginning to end, it's two moving factors. And those two moving factors are not in the same positions that they were when they originally set off. So the first time they hit was about over here. Second time they hit was about over here. Okay? So that's a different kind of cycle in astrology, or a different layer of cycle, but it's the same kind of dynamics. So that relationship between those two planets, or those two energy qualities, every time they pass, it begins a new phase. Every time they're at 90 degrees from each other, there's some kind of forceful sort of pulling away from each other that they have to do. Every time they're at 180 degrees, Jupiter can look over at Neptune, and Neptune can look over at Jupiter and be like, and immediately beef happened, which is a little bit part of that, okay? Astrologically, it's called an opposition. It's a little bit of a beef, but there's a possibility of recognition. And then, okay, here, 270, it's like, okay, well, we had our thing there, and now what happened? And what might it become? Okay? Now, the moon moves every month. But if you have a planet like Neptune, Neptune is moving through the zodiac. It takes it about 11 years to move through one sign. Okay? And we'll put the PowerPoint back on at this point. It takes Jupiter approximately 1 year to move through every sign. So the way that astrologers have often thought about that is that the planets that move more quickly are associated with the fluctuations in our personality that are constant. Yeah. Okay, whoop, going backwards. Okay, and that are personal to us. Whereas the planets that have these long orbits, none of us is going to live to see Neptune go all the way back around. Okay? None of us is going to live to see, if you're lucky, you'll get 1 Uranus cycle of 87 years in your life. What is it in? It's in Pisces. Okay? And yeah, exactly. And Swanee said Aquarius or Pisces. So Neptune, what do we know about Pisces?
There seems to be an ever-flowing amount of touching into emotions due to water signs, maybe specifically Pisces. It's forceful. It can have a vengeance, water, tsunamis, oceans, but it could also be still within a pond or a lake, so has many nuances of charge.
Yes. Pisces is the biggest of all the water signs, you might say. It's the ocean. It's not a pond. It's not a waterfall. It's the ocean. And like we said, you don't turn your back to the ocean. Ocean will smack you. Okay? Now, what do you think, how do you think Neptune's going to do in the ocean? Neptune is enthroned in the ocean. Neptune is sovereign in the ocean. It's home. And it's also exaggerated in the ocean. So you got to watch out for that potentially. Okay? So right now, that's where that Neptune is sitting. Okay? Now, so those planets that take lifetimes to cycle, they're more associated with the changes that we go through on a generational or historical level. Okay? Now, as a scholar, I'm interested in historical studies, patterns. Okay? Come back to that maybe. In graduate school, I started to look into some of these outer planet cycles more. And I started to get into the study of Uranus, okay? So in 2011, Uranus entered Aries, okay? Now, Aries is equivalent astrologically to this point of the new moon. It's the beginning of the cycle. It's the beginning of the astrological year. It's the spring equinox, and out of the darkness of winter, some kind of new something emerges. But if you check out how spring starts, the grass, the sun's gone, the snow's gone often, and the grass is flat, but there's not always life there happening. It's still ramping up under the soil. Okay, so Uranus was going to move into Aries, and I was starting to read what other astrologers were saying, and some folks were talking about things as far back as 2006 and so on. Okay, and I marked on my calendar when Uranus is going into Aries. Okay, now Uranus is a weird planet. It is the weird planet, and in terms of in the solar system, all the other planets' axes are like this, and their north pole and their magnetic north and south is like this. Uranus's magnetic north and south is like this. It actually is 180 degrees rotated from the other ones. Okay, so it appears to be moving on its sides. And so astrologers read into those, like the actual characteristics of the planets symbolically. So part of what Uranus symbolizes is upsets, sudden changes, flips, accidents. Okay? And because Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were discovered, Uranus was discovered 1780s, I think. Who is it? Go ahead. Yeah.
With the French one.
Right. And so Uranus is associated with electricity. Neptune is associated, discovered in the 1840s with magnetism. And Pluto is associated with plutonium or radioactivity. Okay, so I was looking at those. I had it marked on my calendar for months. And Uranus did what's called a retrograde motion, which I can't even get into. It went into Aries, it jumped back, and then when it went into Aries to stay, that night, this happened. So this is Fukushima. That's March, I believe, 11th, 2011. And I was like, what? I was like, really? It's very shocking. And we know Fukushima was triggered by an earthquake that happened under the ocean, sent a tsunami, slammed into the island, and then spewed radioactive waste because there was a reactor there. And so I was just like, what? So that really got my attention. Okay. Now, there was another thing that happened where Pluto, which takes like 250 years to make a full revolution. Okay? And think about that term, a revolution. Okay? It takes 250 years to make a full revolution. Pluto, if Swanee was Pluto and Svecha, I hope I'm not killing your name. You see, I am? I'm sorry. I'll get it right by the end of this. Okay, if Pluto's here and you're here, you're Swanee's Pluto and you're Uranus, the faster moving planet. Okay. Around 2011, once Uranus moved into Aries, it had set itself up into a 90-degree relationship with Pluto, or what's called a square. And so we know that one side of the square is effort, and the other side of the square is actually about letting go. And letting go is a choice, because you can hold on to the past way too long and bring it into the next cycle. Okay, but they were in this kind of square of effort. And a lot of astrologers were like, okay, Uranus, discovered during the French Revolution, is also symbolic of mass mobilizations. And Pluto here is like, see, in Greek mythology, Pluto's the god of the underworld. So Pluto's, it's Scorpio. And it's like, we want to control the situation. And it's our urge to like dominate and like survive, like regardless. Okay. And it can be a really powerful, positive thing when we can connect to that energy in us that's just like, I must. And that energy in us that you can be wiped out, destroyed, and still there's something alive in you that keeps going. Okay? But a lot of astrologers said when those two set up, it's going to be, Pluto represents, and in Capricorn, and Capricorn's also about controlling and running things. People are like, the status quo and the rebels are going to face off. And that square happened 5 or 6 times from 2011 to 2016. And look, in the center there, you got I Don't Know More, which is an indigenous movement that started in Canada, off and around the pipelines, okay? And the imposition of oil companies into indigenous lands to just extract this oil. And this is oil that, by the way, is not choice oil. This is oil that we've burnt up a lot of the good stuff already, the easy to access stuff, okay, tar sands. Okay, so I Don't Know More. And I Don't Know More was part of the spark, not the spark, but part of what happened with Standing Rock came out of I Don't Know More. Okay, if you're paying attention, I Don't Know More, when Standing Rock happened, you're like, yeah. Okay, another one, Occupy, 99%. People have been talking about the 99% at least since 2000, at least since 1999, but for some reason, it went pop then. And people took up this Occupy practice, and it spread throughout cities. And people were protesting against the World Trade Organization and all these folks for a good decade. And it was happening in certain cities, and it was pretty powerful. But here, it just became ubiquitous in the United States. It was all over the place. Okay, you got what up here, the Tea Party. Whether you agree or not, I believe it's an expression of that same energy, this distrust of authority, this deep distrust of authority, and this kind of spontaneous rebel energy. Okay, and then you had the Arab Spring starting in Tunisia, and it spread from Tunisia all over the Middle East. Okay, and a lot of the instability that's happening, or not instability, flat out warfare and famine in the case of Yemen that's happening, got sparked here, partly because the people revolted, and these were nonviolent mass demonstrations, and the leadership of these nations were like, in a lot of cases, the United States, we were here, not here. Okay? And then finally, Movement for Black Lives. Okay? Which had its first wave in the 2015s, 2010, 2014-ish. And it's had successive waves since then. And so this was just something I was tracking and just watching that. I was like, wow. Okay. Now, time. Okay. So look, in this decade, we have 7 conjunctions, and the conjunction is when those 2 planets cross each other. Okay, that's when Jupiter and Neptune crossed up here. We have 7 conjunctions happening this decade. Last decade, and somebody should probably fact check me on this, but last decade, I believe that there were 2, maybe 1. The decade of the 2000s, there was 1, maybe 2. Okay? So these conjunctions happen, and this is one of these cool things about astrology, because it shows you that not all times are the same. You know, some years are chill for you, and some years it's one smack after another. Okay? So part of what is indicated here is that the 2000s there's a lot of resets. No, the 2020s. There's a lot of resets in store for us in the 2020s. Okay, and these are the outer planet cycles. These are planets whose cycles take between 12 and 250 years. All right, at the bottom there, I just want to throw your attention out real quick. Pluto returns to its natal position in the US birth chart on February 20th at 27 degrees. Okay, man, there's so much. Pluto hasn't been in this position according to the US's birth chart, which means the day the US was conceived, where were all the planets, right? Hasn't been in this position for 250 years, which is basically the entire life of this nation. Okay? And remember, Pluto is about this like covert need that we have to control things. And it's partly based off of the fact that we know that ultimately reality can't be controlled. And so we do everything we can. We connive and we scheme and we do all this stuff. And so part of what Pluto shows you in the United States' birth chart is the ways that we have schemed for power, and the ways that we have hidden our scheming in the shadows. Okay? Because the United States is a cancer. It's a cancer. Okay? And the ways that our stated ideals of who we are versus what we actually do or what we feel is necessary. Okay? Now, when I saw in 2020 people pulling down these statues and people saying Mount Rushmore, like, get that out of here. Okay, you have to understand that, like, for one society, for one part of the society, these are heroes. These are exemplars of human behavior. And for another part of society, it's like just to see these people and to see them on the altar and know they're Pluto. It's like, no, and we know now. We can't hide it now. So people are like, those have to come down. And not just those, but what they anchor psychologically, spiritually, socially, politically. Okay? So it's just fascinating to me. And then look at what happened to the Capitol. Okay? That's another one. Saturn-Jupiter conjunction happened December 21st, 2020. That happens every 20 years. Okay? Capitol riots. Now, it doesn't, every time these conjunctions happen, you don't have the same things. And this is part of what astrologers study over history, is they look at the different conjunctions down through time. Okay? But I think part of the reason why things are so strong right now in terms of these cycles in the United States is because partly this Pluto return, and because there's 7 conjunctions that are happening, and also because due to the advent of things like social media, we act more collectively now, for better or worse, than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's just another layer of every time I move, everyone moves. Okay? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Right? So all these collective motions, I think, are amplified now. All right, so time is moving. So there are these 7 that are happening here. Let me just take a quick look at that. And each one of them, each relationship has a different configuration. Neptune and Jupiter's quality is going to be different than Saturn and Neptune's quality. Okay? I'm going to keep moving. Okay, now, academic space, you might say, all right, you had that one, that was a fluke that happened with Uranus. Maybe the whole thing is a case of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, you gather the information that already supports what you believe, and you screen out inconsistencies. And I actually want to acknowledge that maybe my interest in astrology is a matter of confirmation bias. Could be, right? Because one thing that people will ask is, does astrology actually work? Okay, or is it just a game that people are playing? And here's my view. Even if it is a game that people are playing, what do we do in a game? We create a limited space, and then we set up arbitrary rules, and then we run ourselves through them. And one of the ways that human beings create excellence in themselves and in one another is through games. We make up an arbitrary set of rules, and then we get real good at doing it. And it gets better and better, and it brings out a lot of our best qualities. Other people say that astrology it's not about physics. There's no wave from space that's hitting me that's making me act in this way or other. What it is it's a picture of our unconscious. Okay? Some people say, Jung said the unconscious always manifests itself in 4s. North, south, east, west is a basic structure. It's basically just the projection outward of the human body in space. And then you got the under, over, and then there's something that's happening here you can't see. So, we have the indigenous medicine wheel teachings of this place as one of the strongest images of what that looks like as a life cycle and what have you. But you find these 4 square maps in a lot of parts of the world. Okay? So the view here is that it doesn't really matter which map you use to access the unconscious. It just matters that you use one. Another view is that it's like divination. And divination is very similar to a game. You create an enclosed space, you assign meaning to certain parts of the space, and then you throw things into the space randomly to see where they land, and you come with a question. And then what is externally reflected there helps you reflect on the question. Okay? Moving quick now. I think actually astrology is a really interesting kind of eco-psychology. And it's an eco-psychology that includes the celestial nature. It's a psychology that is rooted in the environment and that helps you to root into the environment. Okay, gear switch. That same period of my life, early 20s, opportunity to study in Chicago. study art movements in the 20th century through the lens of Chicago. And one of the folks that I came into contact with, or artists I came into contact with, was Sun Ra. And Sun Ra is he's a jazz musician. It was his music we were playing in the beginning. And he was a poet and a philosopher and a visionary, and some people think a crazy person, and clown and prophet, and he was doing a lot of things. A fashion icon. He had drip. Okay, as you can see. And one of the things that Sun Ra claimed is he claimed that he was from the planet Saturn, that he was not a human being. And he claimed that he had come to Earth to basically save humanity from repeating bad stories, from being caught in bad, and Black people in particular. He said, look, the white people have put a hex on you and caught you in a very small story, and actually you have a much vaster history. And so he drew a lot of his motifs from the Egyptians. Okay, and there's a lot of scholarship happening at that time, okay, because the idea was out there that, well, Egypt, and you see this now, you see a movie like Gods of Egypt, and there's like, I mean, really, people who are definitely Northern European descent playing Osiris. You can't live in the sun like that and be, no, that's not who the Egyptians depicted themselves as. So part of what was happening at this time was a reclamation of Egypt as part of the African cultural tradition. And that there was a diaspora of knowledge that passed from Egypt that didn't just go north to Greece, because it did. It also went west, and it also went south. And some people say that the tradition actually came from the south up north, and it followed the Nile. Okay, so Sun Ra incorporated a lot of Egyptian motifs into his work. Okay, he had his own record label. He was a pioneer in this. Okay, he had his own record label. He printed his own records, made hundreds. He wanted to control the financial dimension of it too, and he wanted creative control. He had a whole ensemble band that he worked with called the Orchestra. And they practiced, I mean, according to some reports, 24 hours a day. And apparently this guy only slept 2 to 4 hours a day. And in all of his public appearances, he never once stopped being like, I'm from outer space. Not one time. Okay? And and the orchestra's still playing. The gentleman there with the saxophone, 91 years old. They're still playing. And he looked at their performances as myth rituals, as enactments of myths, and as transformations of the energy in a space. And so if you listen to Sun Ra's music, a lot of it is like typical jazz that you can work with. And a lot of it is just sonic, just cacophony. There it is. Okay, so Sun Ra he's known as one of the kind of early ancestors or grandfathers of the Afrofuturist movement, right? And he also felt that he was one of the first, if not the first artist to talk about the space age. And he started making music in the 50s and was talking about humanity living in space, or not even living in space, but with it. Okay, and that music was a way to, through vibration and through synchronizing what's happening in the interior person, was a way to travel through the cosmos. And he had an interesting relationship to astrology. He used a lot of astrological motifs, but he also saw astrology as oftentimes part of this package of lousy myths, limiting myths. It says here, I must nullify astrology. I must nullify all prophecies. I must create a different kind of world that is more suitable for me, that I might visit this planet and feel at home. He felt trapped here. Felt like he was on assignment, almost like he was in jail and he had to work off his sentence. So he wasn't the only direction, but one of the kind of seeds of the Afrofuturist movement. And now Black Panther dropped in 2011 and really kind of, was it 2011 or 12? Really kind of made, or was it 18? It was 18 recently. Really made Afrofuturism a household name, but really also literary movement. And the right corner there, you got Octavia Butler, okay? Novelist who really wrote science fiction with Black characters from Black cultural perspectives, from Black historical perspectives of technology and so on. And so in a way, that's partly how you can describe Afrofuturism is science fiction from Black historical or African historical standpoint, okay? And these are just some of the most kind of like notable folks. Another, I think, sister movement of Afrofuturism is the Afropunk movement, okay? Afropunk movement, really powerful embrace of queerness, gender fluidity, a really powerful embrace of costume, a really powerful embrace of like the rest of the kind of punk, larger, sort of more white punk movement of using fashion as a way to shrug off the larger social world, right? Or using fashion as a way to express your sense of marginalization and to create different alternative cultural spaces. So more recently, with the blue lipstick there, that's Rashida Phillips. And she's a lawyer out of Philadelphia, okay? And she also is she's practicing Afrofuturist, ritualist, astrologer, okay? And she's also involved in this investigation about quantum theory. And one of the findings in quantum theory is that time in certain cases appears to be able to move backwards. And so she's been employing astrology with her partner there, Moore Mother, kind of performance and conceptual artist, employing astrology to backcast events, okay? And so that's the chart there of Sandra Bland, who was, taken into police custody and was found hung in her prison cell, and it was declared a suicide. And so they were looking at her chart and kind of looking at the death date, the arrest date, and her birth date, because their idea is that time can actually move in both directions. And that, okay, if we go back to Xanon with the bell, as a conjunction happens, when you hit the bell, after the bell goes, there's a sound that goes, okay? Astrologically, as you approach the point where the ding happens, actually there's a sound, okay? If we go back to the blip, if this is the point where Xanon strikes the bell at the height of the curve, if you slow the curve down as you go up, there's a sound that builds up, and then there's a sound that releases. So when an event happens, there's an energy that precedes the event, and then there's the event, and then there's the release of the energy of the event. So the future actually reaches backwards into the past. Okay? A lot of physicists are starting to look at time and model time around water. And if we look at water, one of the things, if there's a thing that obstructs the water can flow backwards and can create these spaces of stasis. And so part of Rashida Phillips's practice is she experiments with the idea that ritual can actually be like these eddies, where we can slow time down, okay? And we can cause it to reverse itself. And another way that this is being used in Afrofuturist practice is, a lot of Black people being like, wow, like, how did our parents and grandparents and great-great-grandparents make it through such hard times? If I could send them back something, I'm gonna send them back something. I'm gonna send them back prayers. I'm gonna send them back spiritual support. I'm gonna send them back the image of the possibility that their descendants make it. And we can look at our times now. And we can ask ourselves, how are we gonna make this? Look at this fire and all this stuff that just happened in your backyard. And so part of the practice is also to turn towards the future and be like, how did you all do it? Send us back something. Listen for what the people in the future are telling us. Okay, similar to what Joanna Macy's worked out. You can reach into, at certain moments, you can reach backward and forward into the future time. So we tried that last semester, or last year. It was about a year from now in the Afrofuturism class. We tried that. Remember this? We sealed this jar of water for a year. Okay? And we sealed it as a time capsule or a time seed. And we said that we're going to unseal it on a particular date. And we tried to put soul into it. Okay? We tried to put wishes into it. I think you all were there. Okay? I think you all were there. Huh? Try to put wishes into it. Some of the things we put into it, there's 2 stones in here that represent Neptune and Jupiter. There's a bit of bark from a sycamore tree out there. There's water from the Boulder Creek. And then in 2011, Michelle, my partner, went to Uganda. And she went to Lake Victoria. And Lake Victoria is the headwaters of the Nile. Like I said, some people think that the culture of Egypt flowed from the south, so-called up north. So it came from the interior of Africa and moved northward. So we put some of that in here. And we were working with this idea of like, how do we kind of evoke like this sort of ancestral Black African intelligence about the stars and about knowledge of how to work with the flow of time and the backflow of time. How do we evoke some of that? Okay? So we sealed that jar of water. Image there, this is called the Zodiac of Dendera. It's 2,000 years it's old. It's one of the oldest zodiacs in the world. So we were kind of using that as part of our meditation. So the next large outer planetary conjunction is in April. And that's the date where we're going to unseal this. So bare minimum, I'm going to take this water and I'm going to pour it back into the Boulder Creek with some prayers and some blessings. Okay? There's the chart for it, for those astrological heads in the house. Okay? Now, this conjunction, all of these conjunctions, they don't necessarily command anything. You can't, the planets aren't going to make you act in any way. They might suggest things, they might move energies, they might stir things up. They don't make us do things. We choose our response. And the more awake and aware we are about these cycles, according to this theory, the more capacity we have to choose. So this conjunction between Neptune and Jupiter, both of whom are at home in Pisces, one of the things that it has a possibility to do is help us to really wake up around our consciousness with water. And not just physical water, but spiritual water, psychic water, emotional water. Okay? So, yeah. We over. Look at that. Okay, I got 3 minutes. Thank you. We on? Okay, so just some of the associations, common associations with Jupiter, which is the top there, Neptune, which is the trident, and Jupiter, which is Pisces, which is the one on the bottom. Some common associations. And these are some of the things people were talking about: imagination and community. What do we wish in this water? Okay? So here's the invitation. The invitation, this conjunction is going to happen on April 12th. Okay? So from the 9th through the 12th, what I would like to do or offer or be a part of or help hold is a series of myth rituals in the spirit of Sun Ra, series of myth rituals. And you know, it could be 4 of us, it could be 20 of us. I don't know. But a series of myth rituals around these themes, around consciousness of water, around a sense of community and coming together and bringing together resources, around, honestly, grieving. That's a big part of Pisces, grief, grieving and dreaming. And I would like to invite everyone in this room. I would like to invite everyone online. I would like to invite everyone that may share this or view this at a different time to either to partake in this myth ritual and to partake in it in real time on the ground here or in real space, or to do it in a dispersed way. So Regina and I are already been dreaming into some of this. We have other partners who, there's a platform called Embodied Astrology, which is created by Renee Sills, who takes what I'm doing to like level 7, and who will be here in April to join us, okay? The Interdisciplinary Studies Department, because I'm in the Interdisciplinary Studies Department, so that's what we're doing. Not what we're doing, but I'm doing as a person who works there and who's part of that, okay? The Office of Inclusive Community, and hopefully yourselves to help create these myth rituals, okay? So start to just notice what's coming up, imaginatively wise, and if folks are interested and want to contribute, I'm gonna pass out a sign up whatever here, and middle of next week, we'll have some kind of next steps about when we might come together next. And I also want to acknowledge that in terms of our academic year, it's a tough time. It's finals, we got a lot to do. And this is kind of that tricky thing between the way we have structured time is a society and these sort of larger natural rhythms and the ways that we may or may not be in sync with those. So we're gonna have to play with time in some flexible, creative ways and be like water flowing between the rocks of our schedules to create this. So anyway, bare minimum, I'm putting that back there with some prayers, and I would love for folks to, if you feel it, join in that. So with that, thank you all. So I think we are officially done. Maybe we should end it with a bow, and I'll stay around for, yeah.
Thank you, Ramon.
Hey, let's give it up for the people on the tech. Making it possible. There's pizza in the back. Food in the back.
His father started Black Fire Records in New York and was friends with